What is up as a figure hunter? Today we're going to do a midpoint check-in for the heart rate accuracy results for the new Garmin Epix Pro 51mm, the top dog, as well as the new Garmin Fenix 7 Pro. So I've been taking them through a number of CrossFit workouts, high intensity interval training type workouts with a lot of wrist flex, a lot of barbells, a lot of rig work, a lot of different highly strenuous workouts to test the new Elevate 5.0 sensor. And so I wanted to share some of the initial results because I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing, and it definitely differs from the results that I got in the past. I also want to touch base on how the battery life tracking is going so far for both of these watches at full brightness. I just realized today that I've been testing the battery life estimates at full brightness on both, with the always on display at full brightness with the Epix Pro 51mm. And then I'm going to touch on just a few things that I've just been liking so far in doing the review as just sort of a sideline comment or point. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how the battery life is estimates, and I've been testing it all against the Fenix 7X, original, just to make sure that if there's any sort of differences, I can look back at the original 7 series to see if it looks or seems or feels similar on that regard, to be able to extrapolate what value the Pro series are offering. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at first the battery life. We're just talking about the battery life estimates so far with both of these set to full brightness. We're going to talk about a couple of other nuanced things that I'm liking, and then we're going to get into the heart rate accuracy analysis portion. So with that, let's dive in. All right, so one thing I want to talk about is battery life so far. So you can see that this is at full brightness and the Fenix 7 Pro is at full brightness. Really, really impressed, because even if you look at the Fenix 7 Pro relative to the full brightness, it is literally twice as bright as the Fenix 7 original line. So you're pumping out twice the brightness, and so far, and this is at full brightness, so out of the box I think the standards are correct with the amount of battery life, but I am getting over 7 days, about 7.5 days estimated for the battery life at full brightness of the Fenix 7 Pro. And then comes the Epix 51mm. It is at full brightness with always on display. I have done one GPS activity with both of these. Full brightness, always on display, all the bells and whistles, and I typically use this more for the flashlight. It's targeting over 12 days of battery life. Now, if you were to compare that to using the Fenix 7X original, at full brightness, I was getting about 11 or 12 days. At full brightness with the same watch, but a completely different, brilliant screen. So the Epix 51mm, Epix Pro 51mm is just shockingly good for battery life so far at over 12 days at maxed out brightness with always on display. It is, and this is what I wear on my primary arm, so it's what I tend to look at or wrist raise more often. So that's the battery estimates so far. And then the other thing I was going to share that I really like is I'm just continuing to really like all the watch faces that come on the Epix. So you can see, again, I did a whole video on this, but just taking advantage of the visual beauty of the display and being able to see a myriad of different really cool watch faces, some of them more so, some of them less so, but taking advantage of the colors and the richness of the screen. And again, compromising zero on battery life. I mean zero compared to my whole experience with the Fenix 7X across multiple different testing scenarios. Just really loving changing up the displays on a regular basis. So I probably rotate through these, maybe one every day. So changing it out periodically, sometimes 2 throughout a day. Just really loving the watch faces on the Epix Pro series. One thing I'm really liking is the results of the sleep score as well as the sleep tracking. Not looking at specifically at the stages, but the start and end time has just been completely on point. And the variance across different stages of the night. So if we get to another night, started and stopped at the exactly correct time. And then there was nights where I had more of a restless night, and this sort of picked it up, as well as a very restless night, and it picked it up. So this is the other thing, is where the sleep score comes into play. So this shows a lot of time in bed, but not when you correlate it to the sleep score that it gave me. So my Whoop was saying I was fully recovered, ready to do a hard workout, but just because my heart rate variability said good, said that it was above average. But this is the sleep score that I got on that night, where I was in bed for
hours and 26 minutes. But because the restlessness was poor and the REM and light sleep, not great, it actually gave me a completely applicable low score of 55 out of 100. So a poor night's sleep. I felt terrible going into Saturday. It was just definitely a bad night's sleep. Same thing here where I had a long sleep duration. You can see 9 hours and 5 minutes, but it gave me a fair night of sleep, and it was exactly that. Even though it was a lot of time, a lot of sleep duration, I didn't feel 100%. I felt not as great, and it showed in the sleep scores. So really was impressed with this sleep score because I was in bed or had a relatively large amount of sleep time, but it gave me a failing score, and I definitely felt like I was not ready for the next hard workout. My training readiness showed a low score.
Okay, so for the analysis of the heart rate tracking, we basically are just comparing it to the Garmin HRM Pro Plus chest strap and doing all the CrossFit workouts. These workouts have been really strenuous the past few days, and so it's been great to see how the new Elevate 5.0 heart rate sensor that's on the back of both of these has been performing in testing. Now, in the past, both of these watches performed more poorly on Garmin's original Elevate 4.0 sensor that was on the Fenix 7 line because they are just heavier watches. And so that's been the greatest thing to check or to track with the new Elevate 5.0 is to see how do these keep up with them being heavier watches and still a lot of wrist movement, a lot of fluctuation in heart rate, a lot of different variation of movements throughout a long period of time. So with that, we're going to look at the charts to see how each of them compared to a chest strap. So in each of these charts, we're going to look at the Epix 51 millimeter, Epix Pro 51 millimeter versus the chest strap. And then we're going to look at the Fenix 7 Pro versus the chest strap. And then at the end, we're going to look at how the correlation graphs are looking. So the coefficient of correlation to sort of take a little bit deeper dive to compare the accuracy to a chest strap. We're going to see how they are looking individually as well as together with all the data combined. So with that, let's dive in.
All right, so here's the first workout as I showed in my initial release. We're going to always look at the Epix results first and then the Fenix 7 on the same workout. So you can see it was relatively good, but some obvious slippage. Here we have the Fenix 7 Pro. It much better aligned on the lifting portion, but had the hiccup on the last section of the lifting as well as the Metcon. Here we have near perfect agreement. This is fantastic. This is the Epix and the Fenix 7 near perfect agreement. You see some latency in the second round and you see a little drop off in the beginning of the workout. Next we have just a bunch of hard work, heavy lifting in the front end. These are all heavy back squats, and the spike that did not get picked up by the Epix was a 3-rep max. Then you see the Metcon, it was relatively perfect agreement. And you have the Fenix 7 for the same workout, followed all the back squats in the beginning fine, but the 3-rep max had also failed to capture the rise in heart rate, but kept up with the Metcon. And then you have the workout from today. If you look at it, actually the peak heart rate in the Metcon itself was up at 180, basically crossing the barrier of my heart rate maximum of 180. It went up to 181, and you can see it just followed excellently. I mean, just across the board. That's the Epix 7. This is the Fenix 7 Pro. See the same really kind of perfect alignment with the workout itself. So now we're going to look at the correlation graphs just to sort of compare how it performed relative to a chest strap in calculating a coefficient of correlation, which is just sort of a measure of how close it was. And the closer you get to 1.0, the better you are to perfection. And so the Epix is coming in at 0.94 so far, and you see a lot of overlap in the middle line, so the darkened middle line showing the majority of points were exactly the same. So in the chest strap read 140 beats per minute, the optical heart rate sensor on the Epix Pro, and this is the 51 millimeter variant, so this is excellent. And then you have the Fenix 7 Pro, which is basically almost the same, 0.939, and you see almost a little bit prettier graph, but some variance at the peak ends on some minor points. And then you have all of the data from both watches combined together gives a correlation coefficient of 0.941, and you can see that, you know, the graph again lays out really clearly that there's just a darkened line across the midpoint showing the majority of points were nearly perfectly correlated.
So what do I think about these results so far specifically? And first talking about the heart rate accuracy of both of these, I think this is incredibly impressive when tracking the rigors of some of these recent workouts and comparing it to a chest strap. These are both performing exceptionally well, especially the Epix Pro 51 millimeter. This is the heaviest line of watches across any of the watches that Garmin's offers. It's the same weight as the Fenix 7X. And it is still keeping up with the same level accuracy of the Fenix 7 Pro. And both of them are keeping up, I would say, excellently so far. But I'm going to take them through a number of additional workouts to be able to glean what's the final results for the Elevate 5.0, at least on the heavier watches offered by Garmin, starting with the Epix 7 Pro as well as the Epix 7 Pro as well as the Fenix 7 Pro. And then looking at battery life, I feel like they are both performing exceptionally well when it comes to battery life. Now, we might say, oh gosh, it's only getting 7.5 days on the Fenix 7 Pro, but if you consider that it's twice the brightness, so you could easily dim it down. It's twice the brightness of the Fenix 7 original series. And on the original series, at 70% brightness, I was getting about 6.5 days on the original Fenix 7. So here's the 7 Pro at max brightness, which is like gargantuan times, multiple times brighter at 100% than the Fenix 7 original was at 70%, and getting 7.5 days is exceptionally good. And then you take the Epix 51 millimeter Pro, big 1.4 AMOLED screen, and having always on display, having the brightness when you do the wrist raise to go to max brightness, and getting 12.5 days. That's targeting some excellent results. When I turned the brightness all the way up on a Fenix 7X original, the brightness in the backlight all the way up, that's a memory in pixel, that's the old technology, I was getting 11.5 to 12 days. So this with an AMOLED screen at crazy different level brightness, clarity, crispness, colors, all those things, is getting more battery life. That is amazing. So those are my thoughts so far when it comes to heart rate accuracy primarily, and then also looking at a check-in for the battery life, a couple other nuances. That's my midpoint thoughts on the Garmin Epix Pro 51 millimeter as well as the Fenix 7 Pro. It's a Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.